Don Hiltz, probably one of the best men I have ever known. When I got involved with youth baseball in the early 90s, we were always looking for umpires.
Mr. Hiltz was always at the field. The thing I remember the most is he was one of the umpires that was always dressed up. Always had a uniform on, and it was very professional.
Even when you started paying umpires, he wouldn't take anything. He was there for the kids. I mean, Don was a gentleman. He was a great guy.
I just remember him always being behind the plate. It was no matter what the game was, different championships. I just remember him always being there.
Very rare to be an umpire and volunteer. You took a lot of ration of everything from the coaches, and Mr. Hiltz always had a smile on his face. He'd agree with you, and then he'd go behind the plate and play ball.
He was a great umpire. I think his strike zone was a little tighter than most, but I respect that. And he was a great umpire.
He was a good volunteer, and he was always good to us. He didn't say much. He would say nice hit if you had a nice hit, or if the pitch was outside, he'd tell you it was outside. And yeah, he was always a friendly face to have at the field.
I remember times when other umpires who had promised to be there weren't. The call went to Mr. Hiltz's house, and he would show up.
A pretty quiet guy, for the most part, really unassuming, but he was giving back to the community, and that was something that's really special, especially in this town.
Quiet behind the scenes, but was very instrumental in the baseball of Farmington.
Our next recipient of a Moulton Medal this evening is Mr. Don Hiltz. And you'll notice during the intro clip that many people referred to him as Mr. Hiltz because of the deep respect they had for him. Many former youth and Babe Ruth baseball players fondly remember their favorite umpire, Mr. Don Hiltz. I had the privilege of knowing Mr. Hiltz as a kid, having grown up with my good friend and classmate, Alan. After high school, I found myself running the youth baseball program for the 500 and having the nightly task of trying to find an umpire. Many no-shows when you're relying on volunteer umps. But no matter what, if I made the call to Don Hiltz, and I often did, he would come down to the park right away. He never said no. And even when we began paying umpires, Don refused payment. He'd just take a cheeseburger. That, my friends, is what this is all about. And let me say, from a young man running baseball back in my early 20s, thank you, Mr. Hiltz, for everything you did for me and for the 500. Don now resides in Epsom, but you can often find him courtside in the very front row at Farmington High School basketball games, as he still remains a fan of Farmington sports. And should he return to games this winter, I encourage all of our student athletes that are here tonight to introduce yourself to Mr. Hiltz. And if you don't know who he is, you ask Mrs. Peabody or myself, and we'll introduce you to him. Mr. Hiltz has been facing some health challenges. He was going to try to be here this evening, and he unfortunately could not make it. But his very proud children are here accepting on his behalf. Please welcome two former Farmington High School athletes and alumni, his son and daughter, Ruth Ann Gutowski and Alan Hiltz.
First, I'd like to say that though my dad has been fighting some health issues recently and can't be here, he is going to make a full recovery. And you should see him at some basketball games this winter. He is honored to be a recipient of this Medal of Honor. This is a community he is so proud to be a part of and so passionate about the 500 Boys Club and all they do for the community. Our dad was a role model to us and believed umpiring was a great way to give back. Over approximately 15 years, he umpired many games, both girls and boys. He continues to support Farmington athletics and attends many games throughout the year. Thank you.